You know, it's
Uh,
interesting. It's interesting because it's are we going? Are we
we're
started? Are we
going,
in?
we're going, we're rocking
Okay.
and rolling. Yeah, it's because this is what a perfect way to start. You can't start any
Right.
better.
Well, here's the thing about because the this album because I'm very conflicted about this album. I actually listened to it again today, and
Wow.
I was like, this is okay. I have mixed feelings about this album, which I will share with you over the course of our adventure in sound and audio today.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want me? Do you want to lead, or you want me to lead? Because the first question I
Top,
have,
bottom, top, bottom.
I
Which
want to, I want to go top. I want to go top. I want to
okay,
go in. I want to go
go
in.
top.
I want
Go
to
in.
ask you. I want to ask you because you were a punk rock drummer. Am I right?
Right.
Okay. So can you be a punk rock drummer and still love Queen at the same time? Like, can the members of the band are you being made fun of? Are you like, does that
Yes.
ruin your credibility as a punk rock drummer?
Well, yes and no is the answer. Here's what happened with the album because I listened to it again today because
Yeah.
I was 13 when this album came out, right?
Okay.
So I wasn't quite in bars getting fucked up and playing drums with terrible punk rock bands,
Yeah.
but I was very interested in music and I was going to see bands and I had seen Queen live before this album came out because the first three albums, Queen 1, Queen 2 and Sheer Heart Attack, which are great fucking much heavier albums
Yeah.
than a Night at the Opera. Night at the Opera was a real shift for that
Yes.
band.
Yes.
And it was a real shift because I'm 13 years old, so obviously there's a real shift happening in my life at the time as well. So there's some songs in the album that like you're part a kid, you're part a teenager. So songs like I'm in love with my car, you're like yeah, and
Yeah.
then when the grown up part of you thinks really I told my girl I have to forget her, I have to go get a new carburetor.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
so, but I loved that band, and I remember seeing them in Glasgow Apollo. I must have been the Night of the Opera tour. It must have been. It was round about the time this album came out, and I remember Freddie saying, because obviously I was very young, but I remember Freddie saying, "Oh yes, Glasgow loves to rock, doesn't it?" He was all kind of angry because when they were playing the kind of quiet, lazing on a Sunday afternoon thing, people were like, play some harder music
Yeah.
because it was tough for the fans of the band who had been into the first three albums. The first three albums are a different band.
Totally
They're a
different band.
different
Yeah.
band.
Yeah.
And I think that they played Glasgow December that year. I just
December.
popped up.
Yeah. He did December 15th and December 18th, 1975. Yeah.
Right. So that's when I would have been there, and it was they were I mean, I do remember. I mean, it was a great show, and they were amazing. But everybody wanted to hear the Seven Sea Ride, and now I'm here, and Killer Queen, and all that stuff, the real hard stuff. And they were playing Poopsie Doopsie Doopsie Doody Doo Doo, and
Yeah.
us early fans were like that. So as I got older, and I was playing, in bands on my own, the kind of the hip allowance that was made particularly in early punk, the hip allowance that was made for Queen amongst, snotty teenage punk rockers was the first three albums were fine. Some of A Night of the Opera was great, but the band had clearly turned into a direction that, many of us, me included, didn't really go with them. I mean, you could understand the artistry of it. And as individual musicians, they're all shocking,
Yeah.
but
Very talented.
but I mean, amazing. Even on that, I mean, I listened to the album again today. I was like, Roger Taylor, my God, what a drummer! And
Yeah.
he did a lot. He did a lot of stuff on that. Even on, if you listen to that song, "I'm in Love with My Car," which he wrote,
Hmm.
which even they made fun of in the movie Bohemian Rhapsody movie. They made fun of it because the lyrics of that song are atrocious, but the drumming in it is very kind of the tom fills are very reminiscent of Ginger Baker or somebody like that. Really good. He avoids the high
Yep.
frequencies and it gives it a real grind. So the musicianship of the album, as I listened to it today, I went, you can't fault that at all. And of course, there's classic songs on it, but But some of the songs I'm like, I still, even 13-year-old me is like, yeah, fuck you guys for this. What's going on? You know,
They made the shift, and it wasn't the rock and roll that you were used to. They were growing up. They were
they
becoming
were growing
adults.
up.
They had money. I mean, well, they didn't have money. I mean, we'll get all to all of that. But it's like this is, I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is one of their most expensive records they'd ever
Oh
produced.
yeah, yeah.
And
It was huge. Yeah.
but this was like, it's Radiohead turning into, King of Limbs, or going even further. It's the Beatles going further in
Yes,
a different direction. It's like you can't just keep playing the same music over
I
and over.
agree.
Some bands have made a whole career out of that,
Sure,
and great careers, and people love them for that. But I think as artists, and you know it because I know you've shifted a few
sure.
times, is that
Yeah.
you just get to a place where it's like, we could keep doing this, but for some reason I'm being pulled in this direction. So collectively, as the punk rock drummer, were you vocal about your love of Queen, or later in life when you were still playing, or by that point where you were already like, yeah, now it's about this, now it's about the
Well, there was a
Pistols?
point. There was a point in punk, around about when I was just a little bit older than that. So around about 1977, 78, when the only artists you were allowed to like were Iggy and David Bowie. That was it. And then if it wasn't a punk band, you weren't allowed to like Zeppelin, even Sabbath. It was like, no, you had to be part of the little cult that we were doing. It was the Pistols, the Damned, Susie and the Banshees. It was like all the Buzzcocks magazine, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But you couldn't, be vocal about liking any other stuff. Now that's not to say that some of us weren't sneaking off and listening to Zeppelin 4 and
Yeah.
Rhapsody and stuff. Because of course, if you like music, you can't not like the music because of your friends. But
Yeah.
but but there was a real, you weren't allowed to smoke marijuana. You had to like drink alcohol and take speed was an acceptable drug. Marijuana was not an acceptable drug. Punk was weird, because there was a whole set of rules that about what you could and couldn't do, which seems kind of counter punk, really. But I mean, that's what
Yeah.
it was. It was fashion, though. It was fashion, and it was. But to return to the album thing, I always loved the band. I always thought Queen were a great band. But I have to say, I think I departed as I was a rabid fan for the first three albums, and I loved A Night at the Opera when it came out. It was one of these albums that, you're right, it was very expensive to make, and there was hype about it before it came out. I mean, that happens all the time now when a band's going to release an album. But then it was like, it's going to be called A Night at the Opera, and there's going to be opera music in it. And we were all like, oh, what the hell? And it was a big event, and it had this big fancy gatefold cover, and we were all disappointed because we thought it was going to be a double album, but it was just a gatefold album, and it didn't have two albums in it.
Yeah.
And it was an event. It was definitely an event. I stayed a fan of the band, but it shifted. I was always like, like you can't not see someone like Fred on stage and go, oh my God, that's unbelievable. I mean, unbelievable.
Yeah.
But and one of the greatest performers I've ever seen. But I've seen everybody, I think. But but the band themselves, I stopped buying the albums after A Night at the Opera. I didn't even buy A Day at the Races. I was like, yeah, okay, we're done.
Yeah. I still remember my dad watching, God damn, it was like PBS or something, and they were showing Queen live at Wembley. And God, I don't know how old I was, maybe late teens, maybe early 20s, but no older than that. And, he's got the King's regalia on, like that long thing. And my dad, who I always think might have been kind of a closeted, maybe not homosexual, but maybe bi, I don't know. He was,
Okay.
my mom, but there's a thing about my dad. He had a very effeminate side to him as well. But my dad just
Right.
looking at Freddie like, he's the king. That's the great. And my dad was like a jazz guy. And for him to fucking look at Freddie Mercury as like, that's the greatest rock star that might have ever lived. And for me, that was the moment where I was like, oh, maybe I should start listening to more Queen, and because you're always trying to do whatever your dad's doing, and because he got me into music, and that was what kind of started me off into my journey. And this was the record that I started with, like, because I knew
That's
Bohemian.
interesting.
I started with Bohemian Rhapsody. I didn't go back and listen to the other three records until much later. Like this is
that's interesting. Yeah, I wonder how I'd have been if I'd have started with that album. I mean,
I think you would have. I think for most people, if you start with this record, I mean, you're tuning into what could be considered one of the greatest rock and roll records of all time. I think this is.
Oh no, it is. But there are like it's things like, you know, it's people get mad when if you take an iconic album like A Night at the Opera and you say there's a song on this that just doesn't hold up, you know, and people are like, they all hold up, they're all great, and you go, no. One of the great things I think about when you listen to albums is that you get to a song and you're like, you know, but you go on a kind of journey that the band take you on. That's why I don't really I like listening to albums. I listen to vinyl. I listen to like when I listen to this album today, I listen to it the same way I listened to it in 1975 or 76 when I probably got my hands on it. But it was, and it's a great album. And the musicianship is great, and the band are no doubt great, and Freddie is fantastic. But there are songs in that album that I'm like, maybe 13-year-old me was like in love with it, but I don't stay in love with only a few songs. Even in bands you're talking about, like say the Rolling Stones or something, there's only a few songs that I stay with the whole time. Yeah, like the songs like, you know, like Bohemian Rhapsody never gets old, never once. No. But there are songs that in the album. What was the one today? I thought, God Almighty! I think it was "I'm in Love with My Car." Yeah, it was the one where I thought, geez, that's a rough listen. It's weird.
It's not so much that it's rough. It's just that it's called "I'm in Love with My Car," and you're like, I mean, this is such a like a dildo-y thing to sing about, but. But it really is a good song if you strip the
music is outstanding.
Exactly. Outstanding. Yeah. And
that's what's weird about it, because when you like, I almost wish I could listen to it without the vocal track on it just to listen, because it's amazing.
Yeah, it really is.
The song and then it's kind of like on the top of it, you think. You almost want to say, well, that's good, but let Freddie write the words and do it again. You know, I mean, look, it is what it is. I'm not trying to poke holes in one of the greatest rock albums.
No.
But it was interesting to me today. And also, you get older, like you said about the band. The band were getting older. The band were maturing. They were turning into something else, and so was I. You know, and music was too. And it was interesting because Queen, up until that album, Queen were. Like, they belonged to what would become the punk rock people, you know. I mean, they belonged to the dirtier late night kind of fanzines as it was then. You know, there was no like social media, obviously, but you know, you would read the NME or Sounds or the Melody Maker, these music papers, and Queen was almost like an underground band. They were very, very hip, and that album was so huge that it was almost like, you know, when people complain when bands become really successful because I was one of those guys. When the band, you know, I was 13 years old and I loved the band, and I guess I'd been listening to them since I was 11 or 12, I don't know. I mean, I always loved music, and I had an older brother who loved music, and he loved Queen. So, you know, and I would just, like you said with your dad, I was with my older brother. He would, like, whatever he wrote on his school bag, like he would write, you know, the names of bands. All the kids used to write names of bands on their Adidas bags, you know, and I would look at the name of the band on the older kid's bag, and then he'd find out and go and get them. Because one of the greatest shames around that time that I had was I bought my first album in a record store, which was Brian Eno's "Here Come the Warm Jets."
Oh, we did that on the podcast I mean, right before the pandemic, I think. Yeah, that's wow. First record, Brian Eno.
Yeah, I know, and it was, but my brother shamed me about it. He was like, "Nah, he can't even. He's not even a musician." I'm like, I think he might be, you know, and it's like, but there are three Eno albums that I love that they used to shame me over, which is Taking Tiger Mountain by Strategy, Here Come the Warm Jets, and there's one other one. What is it? Before and After Science. Okay. But right about that time, I think it was very important to me, as it is for, I think, all young people, to try and find a music that belonged to us. They belonged to the young people. It felt like with this album, it was so accepted. It was a great album, but clearly everybody, like my dad, listened to A Night at the Opera and said, that's great. I love it. And he liked it. And, and it's like, he didn't like anything else that I played.
Yeah.
But particularly what was coming down the pipe later on really used to annoy him.
Oh yeah, I bet.
But it was, I think the diversity, the musicianship and the creativity of the album, particularly at the time, can't be denied. Like they changed the game in production. And I think they changed the game in. Did they record that on 8-track? Was that an 8-track or a 4-track or something? They recorded that on?
Adam's the fax guy. I'm the leader. What do you got, Adam?
Double check what method they used to record it, but yeah.
Well, what is before we even start getting into some of the songs, what's the meat and potatoes of the record, Adam, that we really need to talk about? Is it all from background? So that you got from me. All right. So much of the material was crafted alongside producer John Simon, who joined the recording when Paul Simon suffered from writer's block. The album was recorded gradually over the period of a year, with production speeding up around later months of '67. Commercially, given its musicality, opera was a major risk. The final version left UK music execs nervous due to it being an unprecedented financial gamble. Too many of this eclectic set of songs failed to rock or pop out, commercially speaking. It was reportedly the most expensive album ever recorded at the time of its release until Fleetwood Mac's Tusk in '78. This wanted me to ask you a question before we start getting into the record. Has there ever been how much, so the album cost so much and how much time they devoted to it. What is the most foolish or like looked down upon thing that you've ever done that turned out to be a huge success?
Me?
Yeah, you.
Late night television, without a doubt. Without a doubt. I thought I was in for 2 days.
Really?
I thought, clearly they've made a mistake and they asked the wrong guy, and this bullshit is going to last maybe to the end of the week. It changed my fucking life.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, but I really, I swear to God, it was one of, when you go to a gig and you think, this is stupid, but I'm here, so I might as well do it.
Yeah.
And it just, wow. It was crazy in a different direction, and I was amazed by that. That was a shocker to me. Like I've never quite recovered from that, and people still say to me, like, will say things like, I really loved your interview, and I'm like, I don't do interviews. I don't know what you're talking about. Like I've done an interview in my life. I don't know. I've never trained at that. I'm not a journalist. I don't know what to do, and. I think it's a little different now because of stuff like what you're doing. Like you're a comic, and I know you as a comic, and you're a comedian, and I see you as a comedian, and all comedians do podcasts. It's kind of part of the gig now, and you find something you like, and like you're doing this one, and you do a podcast. But back then, I was like, I had been doing Eighth Banana on a sitcom to pay the rent, on the Drew Carey show, and then that thing happened. I mean, it was just a very odd direction. I remember when I was a punk rocker, I used to say, you'll never get me wearing a suit and sitting behind a desk. And it used to occur to me a lot of nights when I was fucking wearing a suit and sitting behind a desk. So tell me about the movie.
When did you realize you weren't getting fired? Like how far in? Like, was it really like you got past a week? You were like, I'm still going. And then you got past a month. But when did you realize that CBS fucking loved you? Because you were great. You realized that you were like probably one of the most fun hosts on late night television still to this day. You know what I mean?
I think what it was this. It was an anomaly in television. CBS didn't love me. They fucking hated me.
Really?
But what they did, yeah. But the thing was, Dave Letterman owned the time slot. They had done a deal with Dave earlier to. I don't know if CBS hated me. They just didn't give a fuck about me. But Dave had done the deal earlier, so he owned the time slot. It was his as long as he was on the air. Mm-hmm. So he could put on it pretty much what he wanted. And Dave liked me because Dave's crazy, and he said, "No, this will be funny." and Dave and Peter Lasalle. And I think that was kind of it. put me into the time slot, and CBS kind of forgot about it because they knew they couldn't really do anything when Dave was there. And when I figured out that they weren't going to fire me, not because of anything I was doing, it's because they were frightened of Dave. And Dave wasn't really paying attention to me because he had his own show to do every day. I figured, Jesus Christ, nobody's fucking paying attention. Nobody. I can do what I fucking like. And it went on for a long time. And then, like a lot of gigs, eventually you're like, all right, I feel like I've exhausted what I can do here. But and then I stayed another couple of years because of the money. But
yeah, of course.
but funnily enough, at the end, because I really knew I'm done, there's nothing I can do. If I look back at the shows now, the best shows I think are the last couple of years when I genuinely didn't give a fuck and I knew I was going to leave. That's when we really got into, messing around with the skeleton and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I mean, it just never ceases to disappoint, like to watch it and always be entertained. I also think it was like a perfect companion piece with David. It was that CBS it was like you said, it was like David had full control and it just felt like you guys could do whatever the fuck you wanted. Whereas like whatever, not to shit on NBC and what they did or what Conan did, but it was so different and so raw and so fun. And it was more punk rock. It actually, you were able to take the elements of the shit that you did, as a kid and bring that into the late night scene.
Yeah, and when I got the show, I got all the bands on. I had the Buzzcocks on before Shelley died, and the Pistols were on, and I had the Damned on, and it was it was great. I had Echo and the Bunnymen on, and
oh god,
it was great because I had seen all of those guys. Like Ian McCulloch from Echo and the Bunnymen. I remember drinking with him in Glasgow when I was really young. I was like 18 or 19. And the Echo and the Bunnymen were huge, and we had this big fucking mad night in Glasgow, and that was the only time I ever saw them. And then when they were on the show, and I'd got fat, and they'd got fat, and everybody got fat, and and I went to see Ian before the thing, and I went, I don't know if you remember this, but we went out, and he went, "Fuck off! It's you!" And he fucking remember. How could that happen? I don't know, because I was just some drunk guy that had hung out with them for a night in Glasgow. We had club and night moves, and we all got fucked up and all that, because I was still in bands at that time, and I never ever saw him again until he was on my show on American television, which was the weirdest thing. It was great.
Yeah. Oh god, I love it. All right, let's get back to some of this shit in the record. All right, okay. Adam, am I wrong? And I know because I was talking to Morty about it. Was the band broke at this time?
Yeah, because basically, like any other record deal, around that era, they really got nothing out of it. So, and then all the writing credits also, like, because Freddie was getting a lot of the whatchamacallit, because he had the writing credits, he was getting the money. So that way, that's another reason why I'm in Love with My Car was important, because Roger Taylor was the primary writer on it. So like that's how they were getting paid. And then because of this album, they figured like it became everybody gets the same, no matter what the royalty credits are.
I remember hearing that at the time, because I was a kid and I was a greedy, ambitious little kid, and I played drums, and I thought, so the drummer gets to write a song, because I had never seen. I was like, what? Why is that? And I remember that being a thing at the time. People were talking about that at the time. There was a lot of talk about money around that album at the time, as I remember, and it was mostly about how expensive it was. People were like shocked and appalled, and actually, that was part of the impetus to what became punk rock later, because everybody felt that music had become too overblown. You couldn't see a band unless it was in a stadium or like albums had like ceramic eagles on the cover and all that kind of stuff. It was like, it's fucking crazy.
It's everything. To go off what you're saying, music does this, and movies did it when Cleopatra ruined the Hollywood studio system, and then they started making all the Scorsese low budgets and the Coppolas and New Hollywood, and same thing with hair metal when you have Motley Crue, flying on rockets and just like these spectacles at stadiums, and then you have grunge. It's happened. It keeps happening throughout music where something gets too big, and then the reaction to it is punk rock or grunge or whatever. So this is
And I think that's right. And I think that it's different. I mean, seeing it in the context of looking at the album now, and I think music's like every other piece of art that, you know, you see it the first time you see it, and then the 100th time you know, and the you know, it's I don't know, what is it, 50 years since that album came out or something? I mean, it's got to be something like that. Like, I can't tell you how excited I was to get that album in my hand when I got it. You know, and I tried to think of all that today when I got the gatefold cover today, and it's not the copy because I've been a very busy guy since I was 13, but I maybe it is. I got it in a, you know, I got it in a vinyl shop. Maybe it is. I think it's
Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, but I tried to remember what it was like, and the unbelievable kind of rush that you used to get as a kid when an album that had been talked about, particularly this album, because everybody knew it cost a lot of money, so everybody knew it was like it was a very special thing.
Yes.
But I do remember. I was trying to think about all the stuff I remember at the time, and I remember, as it turned out, December 1975, when I saw Queen at Glasgow Apollo, that Freddie was pissed because the audience reaction to the slow songs. You know, like the whole kind of, it wasn't like people were aggressive or anything, but the energy kind of went out of the theater. And then when they did like the old favorites, Now I'm Here, and you know, and Killer Queen and stuff, yeah, just the roof, just Seven Seas of Rye was like, that was the song everybody wanted to hear then. You know, it was just like, bam, you know, it was amazing. Yeah. People used to talk about that being it was like a punk song as well. People would say at the beginning of punk, people tried to, and I'm sure I was one of them, you would try and get your favorite songs from your bands that weren't allowed into the punk lexicon and try and bring them in. So people would say about Editions of You by Music, or anything by Iggy, or I remember this was British punk. We were only beginning to hear about the Ramones and what was coming out in television and stuff that was coming out in New York City, which really was running right at the same time.
Sure, yeah.
Maybe I think the New York stuff maybe even earlier, to be honest. I think that Malcolm had gone to New York and seen the future and brought it back. That was part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is the thing. It's like, think about what's going on, you know, 75. I don't even think like Queen in America had that much success yet.
They hadn't happened at that point, I don't think.
No, it took a couple albums before they really blew up, and with News of the World, which had like We Will Rock You, it had We Are the Champions,
right?
Which made me want to ask you this question: what was it like when you came to do the Drew Carey Show as like a British comedian that really didn't have a huge track record in America? I mean, same thing that might have applied to the fucking late night talk show thing, where they're like, why is this Scottish guy the boss in a fucking Ohio, you know, office building like this? Like, how the fuck does a Scottish guy make his way in here?
You know what it was?
What?
Here's what it was. It was like, I was in LA looking for a gig, right? Just auditioning like everybody else, looking for a job. And there was some mix up, and I got asked to go to audition for the part of the Hispanic photographer in a show called Suddenly Susan with Brooke Shields.
I remember that show. I remember that show. Yes, of course.
Right. And there was a Hispanic photographer part. So I didn't know what it was. I get the sides. I'm like, oh, this is stupid. Now, I was saying to my buddy, I'm not going to go. And he went, fucking go. You know, what you needed in surgery, doctor? You don't have a fucking job. Just go. So I went, all right. So I go, I learned the sides, and I go to the audition. And I get there, and there's a whole bunch of guys that all look like Antonio Banderas waiting to go in to audition, and me, right? And I'm like, oh no, man. So I go in, I wait my turn, they call me, I go in, and the producers and everybody look at me like, oh, what the fuck? And I'm like, and I start talking, and I'm not going to do it, but I did this kind of horrible attempt at Speedy Gonzalez accent stuff. I mean, it was bad. And they were fucking howling with laughter. And I said, look, I'm really sorry for wasting your time. I did my best. And then we were talking. And the casting director for Warner Brothers said to me, a guy called Tony Sepulveda said, obviously.
Oh my God, I know. I love Tony. Dude, huge fan of Tony Sepulveda. He's been a big supporter of my career. Hasn't booked me in shit, but I love the guy to death.
Well, I love him too. Tony changed my life because at the end of the audition, he was laughing and he said, "Obviously, you're not right for this job." I said, "I know that. I'm sorry for wasting your time." And he said, "Yeah, but we are. There's a show that's kind of beginning to happen, and they're looking for an English boss. Can you do an English accent?" And I said, "Si, senor, yes, I can." And and then he then I went and I talked to Drew and Bruce Helford, and the reason why I stayed on that show, I think, is really because of Drew, because Drew obviously is from Cleveland, and Cleveland, Ohio is like Glasgow, Scotland. They're very similar cities, and we got on very well. And his background is very similar to mine. He's a stand-up, and and we got along, and and I felt like it was Drew that said this. He said, "You're the kicker on the show. You just come out, you hit a line, and then leave. That's it." And I was like, "Fine," and that's the way it kind of went, and it got me going, and I was on that show for like 10 years or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great because it allowed me, because I didn't do that much. I would write movies in my trailer, and then we would go and shoot independent movies and all that during the break. It was fun.
Yeah. I mean, talk about just a great gig for you to really showcase just how funny you are, to work with such funny people. Everybody on that show is a comedian at the top of their craft. I would say like Drew knew what he was doing, just he put so many talented people around him, which made he didn't have to be the funniest guy. He just literally could let any of you, like you said, just come in, say the banger of a line, get the fuck out of there.
Well, and also Drew's like, that vibe that you get in a green room when comics are riffing and enjoying each other and having and laugh, and there's nothing but just the fun of the situation. That was a lot of the vibe of that show. That it had a kind of green room feel. That it would, and I love that. I love that about it. It was a big time for broadcast television. I mean, if you were on a sitcom on ABC at that time, that was a big deal. Huge deal. Now I think you probably get bigger numbers on a podcast, but then, it was crazy.
Television,
13, 14 million a night or something like that.
That's insane. Yeah.
Crazy.
I know I don't think a television show on air has gotten those kind of numbers. Actually, that's not true. The last one that did it was when Roseanne came back, and then she went off her fucking rails, and then it was just like, oh my, this got like 25 million views or 15 million views on that first episode, and then she said whatever the fuck she said, and they were like, all right, get rid of her, and that was it. That was the downfall. And you're right, podcasts, or especially this podcast. This podcast gets 30 million listens an episode.
I heard 30
that. million. Everybody's listening to this. Brian May is tuning in for this.
I heard that you won the Oscar for best podcast last year.
Best podcast. I won the Mercury Music Prize. I've everything, dude. Everything from this podcast. Let's talk about some of the tracks off this album, because I think this is a record that, I was talking to Morty. Well, by the way, Adam, is there anything else about the production or anything that I left out that we really we got a hit or anything?
No, nothing from the background really. It's now it's time for song stuff, I think.
Let's talk songs. So Death on Two Legs, which I have come under the assumption, and from reading it, this is a fuck you. Am I right, Adam?
Yeah.
This is a fuck you to their management. So they've gotten screwed by their management before this record. Like I said, they almost had no money from the previous records. This is their big fuck you. Before I ask you the question, which I'm very excited to ask, let's see if we've got it. He wrote this dedicated to Norman Sheffield, Queen's former manager and co-owner of Trident Studios. Queen felt that Norman had not provided them with the support they needed. It's a Mr. Sheffield and the band parted company prior to the recording of this album. The surviving band members noted the unhappy atmosphere in the Days of Our Lives documentary, explaining that the band had felt so hard done when they were producing hit singles without seeing any of the money. And with incidents such as Roger Taylor being told he couldn't hit the drums too hard as they supposedly couldn't afford new drumsticks, which is insane. This is a band. Like, let the guy hit the goddamn drums. But as Taylor noted, you see them, the management running around in stretch limos and think, hang on, there's something not right here. So did you know, just from listening to this, because I wasn't really paying attention until I read all about this. Could you tell that this song is the energy of somebody saying fuck you to somebody?
Oh yeah, yeah. No, that was part of the legend of the album, was that, and also that they said "kiss my ass goodbye" in the song, and we were like, oh my god, it was so profane, and it was an American swear word, because we would have said arse, but they said "kiss my ass goodbye," and it felt heavy and rebellious. That's actually one of the songs. When I was listening today, I thought this holds up for me.
Yeah.
We knew about it. And it made the band feel more badass. It made them seem more kind of like exciting, basically.
Before I get to the question I want to ask you, is Queen a badass band? Like, I think now, yes, but I mean, at the time, were they, are they Guns N' Roses? Kind of like
if you had been in Glasgow Apollo in December 1975, you would never have seen a more fucking aggressive, wonderful, energetic, amazing rock band. I mean, blow your fucking hair back. When these guys opened up, and they were, by that time, there's 3 albums that they'd recorded a Night of the Opera, but they were, they'd been working for a while. They'd been playing a lot of gigs. They'd been touring forever. I think I saw them like 2 or 3 times. And they were insanely powerful. Of course, they stayed that way their whole career, but it became, as an artist should, when they first emerge, it should be really exciting. And then they have to develop. And I think that's what this album is. I think you were absolutely on the money with that. This is about a group of artists doing the bigger thing.
Yeah.
But because I was young at the time, and because the energy of what was kind of around at the time, you got to remember as well, Britain was a fucking shit show at this time. Like garbage strikes, and the miners were on strike, and there was 3-day weeks and power cuts all the time. It was fucking miserable. And the idea of this hugely flamboyant lead singer, dude, come on, wearing a white kind of mankini or something, and like a whole so much don't give a fuck about that guy. That I think they were badass, and I think they remain badass. I think they were badass then. The sound of that band was incredible.
Completely. All right, this is my question. I'm very excited to ask you this. So this song's a fuck you to their management. When have you ever had your fuck you moment in your career? That noise.
I don't know. I don't know that I've had much of that, because
really,
not like when I've said like fuck you to someone. There's been people where I'm going, you know what, pal, this ain't working. But I don't, with management and agents and stuff, you do that. But it's fucking show business. It's not that important. You can get bent out of shape about it all. And
sure.
I mean, my take this job and shove it stuff was always when I worked in bars or when I was a drummer in bands. Like, fuck you, no, fuck you. And that was the, I think I seethe with passive rage now in a more polite way.
Yeah.
Just like,
yeah.
I don't have a ton of that. There have been times though that I've thought, this is fucking great. There was a couple of times when I was doing a stand-up tour about 3 or 4 tours ago or something, and just at the end of late night, and I used to, at the end of the show every night, take whatever mic I was using and throw it as high as I could into the thing, and it would smash every night, and we'd always get a bill for $1,000 for a new microphone. And the tour manager was like, "Why'd you do that?" And I'm like, "Because I fucking like doing it. That's why." He said, "It's costing a fortune." Like, I don't fucking care, So I guess that, if anything, but destroying, decent, sound equipment is not something that you want to hang on to forever. It's kind of adolescent, I think.
Yeah, but there's something fun about it.
Yes, there is. Yes,
There's something very fun about it. Like you see the great rock stars do it.
I think if I threw a microphone in the air now, people would just think I was having a stroke. You know, so I think I
Should we check on him? Is he okay?
He's like, whoa, his arm just flew up. Is he all right?
All right. Lazy on a Sunday afternoon. This essentially outlines a man's week and how much he loves his Sunday afternoon. Contains a paradox halfway through when he claims to be an ordinary guy from London town, but on Fridays goes painting at the Louvre. Great song. Great song. Great second track. Great, from opening from that going into this. Mercury explained in his 76 interview, that's the way the mood takes me. That's just one aspect of me, and I can really change everything on Sunday afternoon to something like that. I just love doing the vaudeville side of things. It's sort of my test. I love writing things, and that's what I'm sure I'm going to do more of. It's quite a challenge. How do you unwind?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, I'm here in Scotland. All you have to do is be in Scotland for a while. Where I live in the countryside in Scotland a lot of the time, and there's a lot of unwind here. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if you're like this. I don't really like. I'm a comedian. I that's what I do. It's what I am. I would do it for no money, or I do it for money. I can't really do anything else. So I write.
Yeah.
Because you're gonna need new stuff, and I like that, and I work on it, but it's not really like a job. It's just kind of who I am. I'm going to do a real name drop, but given that it's a music podcast, music history podcast, I think it's appropriate. So round about the time I was on the Drew Carey show, sometime in there, I'd written a screenplay that got a lot of attention. I don't think the movie was made, but the screenplay was good, and Mick Jagger read it. And Mick asked me to write a screenplay with him for an idea he had. And I said, okay. And I went on tour a little bit with the Rolling Stones during the Bridges to Babylon tour. And Mick and I were working on this screenplay. And it was to get to see the inside of the Rolling Stones and the machine and the legend and the thing. It was just beyond belief. But what I picked up, one of the things I picked up most strongly about that time was Keith Richards. And that Keith wouldn't give a shit if he was playing guitar in a pub in London or a fucking stadium in New York City. He gets to play the guitar and he fucking loves it. And that's who he is. And I feel like, maybe he collects cars, maybe I know that he likes books and that and he does all of those things. But really what he is he's someone who plays the guitar and he loves it. And I get that, and I understand that. And what I do is what I do. It's how I unwind. It's like I unwind on stage, to be honest.
Yeah, me too. Oh God, yeah. Dude, if there's a day, I could have nothing going on during the day, and I mean nothing in my career. But if I have a show at night, I'm the happiest guy in the world. There's a pep in my step from the second I wake up until I get to that show. And that's how I relax. I don't have a wife. I don't have kids. That's how I enjoy myself.
Right. And I have a wife and I have kids. And I can assure you, that's not the way to relax. But what's interesting is that I think about that whenever I get, when you work on a movie or something and they give I don't know if they do it anymore, but they used to give you like per diem. So they give you cash in an envelope.
Yeah.
And look, I'm doing okay financially, but I never feel richer than I do when I've got a couple of hundred in cash in an envelope.
Yeah,
and I feel like that's what stage time is like. Like I can be on, I've done Radio City, I've done Carnegie Hall, but I'm just as happy and just as excited to be doing the Funny Bone in Charlotte or where it doesn't matter. You get to do the thing.
Yeah.
And something about, if you're a real comic, and I know you are because I've seen what you do, it's where the magic happens. It's where something happens. You get inside something. It's where you write in front of people. That's what a thing. I mean, you write some, but then you write in the open air. It's amazing.
Yeah. How are you getting your kicks now in Scotland? Are you able to perform every night or
no? I perform here. I go to America all the time.
Okay.
Yeah, I go to, I've just finished like a massive tour, and I'm going back to, I live part of the time in New York City, so I'm going back to New York, and I got gigs there, and I always keep doing gigs all the time. There's always some.
Good, good. Yeah, I was gonna say because it's like because I didn't know that you lived in the countryside, and it's like to me, it's like I get it, but then also hearing you talk about how much you love gigging, and I mean, it's just like you must be consumed all day long with writing because it's like just because you have such a buildup as a natural funny person and observationalist. It's just like you see the bits coming in, so I can imagine by the time you get
Yeah,
to New York, you've got hours of new material. If am I right?
yeah. I just shot a special, so I have to. You know that feeling of it's almost I'm always envious of musicians, like they write it, they get it ready, and then they go out and do it for the next 20 years. I'm like, we
Yeah,
write it, we ready, we do it, it's fucking gone, it's over.
gone, it's gone.
I
Yeah.
just shot a special, and so now I have to write a whole new, hour and a half.
Oh, good God. That's
I
fun.
love,
That's
I
great,
love,
dude. Oh God, I can't. Please let me know when you're in New York because hopefully I'm here because I live here.
yeah.
So I would love to fucking go out on
Oh,
just to
that
watch you work. Um,
and I'd love to watch you too. I'd love to do that. That's great. Nothing I like more.
so all right, let's get in. I'm in love with my car. Queen's drummer Roger Taylor wrote the song. It is dedicated to Queen roadie John Harris, a boy racer to the end. There was still something autobiographical in this car as a metaphor for sex song. I'm not obsessed. The Queen drummer told Mojo, but I do love a good car. Taylor wanted this to be a B-side to Freddie Mercury's Bohemian Rhapsody, so much that he apparently locked himself in a cupboard until Mercury agreed. Like we talked about this earlier, this is it cheesy? Yes, a little bit, but it's because it's the metaphor. It's about sex. Okay, musically, like we said, this is an incredible song. It's probably the first real fucking just in your face song from the beginning of the record till now. I wanted to ask you, what is there a piece of technology that you have an unhealthy obsession with?
Oh, I'm talking to you on it right now. The
Yeah,
phone. I mean, but I'm not in love with my phone. I hate it. I hate it, and I hate that I'm so kind of drawn to it. I don't do social media anymore. I finally show
got off it.
business. The great American capitalist system now has you pay some people who sit in computers in New Jersey and they
Yep.
tweet like you. And
Oh yeah, I've got
I,
kind of like that, but not probably on the level. But I pay for somebody to do everything, and it's brilliant.
oh yeah, yeah, and then you don't have to look at it because I feel like, particularly if you're a stand-up, that I wouldn't. You don't try and get the audience all into your head. It's like I do my thing. If you don't like it, don't come. I mean, it's I can't I can't do market research. I'm not in that game, and I feel like the phone got me doing that. Like, oh, people didn't like that, and somebody's mad at me for that. And I'm like, if you're a comedian, somebody's going to be mad again. It's
Mhm.
just goes with the fucking turf, you know. And that's fine. But I think inviting all that in, and then I never was ever on Instagram, and then I went on it like maybe 2 3 months ago. Somebody showed me that search button. Like, have you just seen this thing? Like, you press
Yeah,
the little magnifying glass, and then suddenly it says like, "cute kids," and a pig wearing a hat, and then someone
yeah,
driving a car, and a plane taking off, and a fucking and like, bum, 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 bum. It's like Pandora's. It's like everything,
everything.
everything.
Yeah.
Like, it's fucking crazy. And I was like, "Whoa, man, that's too bad." And that's when I got off all social media. I thought, if that's where it's going, I have to stop now. So I have
Yeah.
an unhealthy, but I'm working on a relationship with my phone. But I don't think I'm alone in that.
I feel like but I think you have to, where you live, being on the other side of so far away from the entertainment industry, it's like to be able to look at your phone and kind of have an idea of what's going on. I mean, I think that's a brilliant thing that now you can live in the countryside in Scotland and still be
Sure.
connected to New York and Los Angeles and everybody. But there's the balance. And I think, like you said, it's like if you want to get lost on your phone, you can go down a deep wormhole,
Yeah.
an unhealthy wormhole, which, but then also it's like, if you can Just go, all right, this is like a pig racing a duck. Okay, cool. And then you throw it away and you're like, all right, I'll look at it. I'll get it next time I take a shit. And if you only look at it when you're taking a shit, I mean, that's pretty good. You know what I
I
mean?
think that's all right, but here's the thing. I don't know if you know anything about me, but restraint once I get into an addictive situation has never been my strong point.
Same.
So,
Yeah.
so like once I get fucking, it's easier for me to not fucking go to be off social media than to. It's like I can't have one drink. I might as well not have one drink. It's like I can't do it like that. It's not how my brain works.
Yeah, same. 100% same. And I obsess over everything. It's taken years and years and years for me to just get to like a nice baseline where it's like I have the things that I have unhealthy obsessions with, but most of them are like healthy things. So I won't even say unhealthy obsession. It's just I switch from all the bad shit to the good shit. But I'm obsessed with that shit as well, which is probably to an annoying level.
What's the good shit?
Yeah, eating right, working out, I meditating,
right.
man. I do all the stuff that LA people get made fun of for, which I don't live in LA, but I lived there for a long time. So all the holistic bullshit, because I was looking for anything, which is going to lead to the next question when we get into You're My Best Friend, because so, and it's been so long at this point, but the reason I do this podcast is because I lost my best friend, this brilliant comedian, Angelo Bowers, who would have been the next Dave Attell. He would have been one of the biggest just set up punchline comedians of all time. And that's not just me saying that. That's Sarah Silverman and Kyle Kinane and Bobby Lee and all the LA people. And he died far before he actually was, became the star that he is. And to a point where it's unfortunate, where it's like, even like he never was into social media. So there isn't much of a footprint of him, but in a good way, because it was such a horrible way that we lost him in this car accident that we were in together. A lot of good has come from that, which is like this podcast. Me and him used to talk about, the greatest albums of all time and Rolling Stone in this list. And we used to argue about, should this be ahead of this and fucking that and this? And then the goddamn Comedy Jam, where the show I do where comedians sing a cover song. And then even my stand-up now, which is very musical, when I wouldn't call myself a musical comic, I just know music so much and I sing so well. It's just who I am, that he was the guy that said to me, I don't know how you got to do it, but you gotta start working more music into your act, because that's who you are. And so to go off You're My Best Friend, which I could go through the stats, that is written by John Deacon about his wife. And it's, it's probably, one of their most popular songs. My question to you is, who would you consider to be like your best friend, whether in the entertainment world or in just regular Craig world? Like,
my wife, definitely my wife. I mean, it for two reasons. One, if I don't say that, that would be, a dangerous answer.
She's in the background right now, just like,
how is that? And also, it kind of, I was, it took me a while to figure out, in relationships, particularly a romantic relationship, how to have more the music in my act, to be authentically myself. You know what I mean? And it's like Megan and I met, actually it's our wedding anniversary next week. 15 years we've been married, and we've been together like 18 years or something like that. And it's something that's kind of grown over time, and it's a friendship, and it's definitely my wife, because it's a very unusual thing, and it's good because we also have sex, and that's just like icing on the cake with your best friend. I have some friends like my buddy John, who I'm very, very close with, but I don't think that would work.
No, you don't want to fuck Ron or John. Dude, let me ask you this.
Well, I don't.
I mean, who knows? It's 2020, it's 2023, almost 2024, dude. There's no gender. What about your friends that you grew up with? Like, how do they feel about your success? Like, are you still keep in touch with all those guys? You still keep in touch with the people in the bands? And do they see this shift? Like, how did you go from being a punk rock band to suddenly a brilliant stand-up comedian actor?
Well, the thing is, thank you for saying that. But the thing is, it was I keep in touch with some of them, but not all of them. And we kind of run into each other. I'm 61 years old. So, we all have shit to do. Some of these guys have got grandkids, I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
it's not.
It's a
So
lot.
it's a lot. But what happened is punk rock, when it was happening at the time when I was in my mid to late teens, it was, it wasn't just music. It was everything. It was, it was fashion. It was the clubs. It was, there were no stand-up comedy clubs that I knew. I never knew anything about stand-up comedy. There was Billy Connolly and nobody else. And what happened was that because we were all kind of together, the bands would all play together, and people would have relationships and boyfriends and girlfriends and girlfriends and girlfriends and boyfriends and boyfriends and all these different things, relationships and all this community going on. And the reason I got into it is that Peter Capaldi, who was the singer in one of the bands I was in, Peter's a very famous actor. He played
Doctor Who.
Doctor, yeah, that's
Doctor
right,
Who, yeah, he was Doctor Who.
Peter was the singer in one of the bands I was in, and Peter said to me, you're funny. He was into like American stand-up. Like he would buy Steve Martin albums and that kind of stuff, and he would listen to Bob Newhart vinyl and stuff like that. And he said, "You're funny. You should do stand-up comedy." I'm like, that doesn't even make sense. He went, "No, when the band are changing, when we're changing from one backline to another backline and the drum kits change stuff, you should go up and do stuff." And so I did, and it didn't work at all. But here's the thing. Here's the thing, and you're a stand-up, so you understand this. One of the first times I did it was at the ICA in London. It was a festival of Scottish punk bands, right?
Okay.
And it was packed, Scottish punk bands, it's packed full of Cockney punks, right? And I'm going to go up and do my little comedy bit between one band and another band. I'm in the first band, and then I come out, and I'm trying to do some comedy. And I thought it would be funny to wear a kilt. So I wear a kilt, and I'm trying to do stand-up, but I'm so fucking terrified. My knees are shaking, invisibly shaking. And these Cockney punks down the front are going, "His knees are knocking, his knees are knocking." And then it became a chant in the fucking game. "His knees are knocking, his knees are knocking." And they didn't kind of boo me off stage. They kind of chanted me off stage and booed me off stage at the same time. And this is how I know I'm a stand-up, because I came off and everyone was like, patting you in the back and saying, "Oh, I'm sorry" and stuff. And I went, yeah. And I thought, I got to do that again.
Yeah, you do. There's the addict. There's that addict.
I don't know why, but I have to do that again. And and that's what it is. And I think whenever you talk to a real stand-up, they're like, that's, I don't know why, but that's the thing. Getting booed off is like, okay, let's go.
It's funny that you said that. So this whole summer, I opened up for this guy. There's this big musician here in America, this country rock guy named Jelly Roll, that's like taking country rock by storm. But he saw me at the show in Vegas, and he invited me and my band, who I do the jam with, to basically go in between, start the show in arenas and amphitheaters. I would do 20 minutes at the beginning, then I bring up the first act, then do another 15 minutes, bring up the second act, do another 15 minutes, bring up Jelly Roll. And it would be like, you'd walk into the arena, and let's say my first set, for the 20-minute set, there would be 1/3 audience. And then by the time I brought up the second act, it would be 2/3 to full. And because I had that band, and that's the thing, is like you just said, you going up there with just yourself, trying to, at a concert, Bill Burr, who's opened for Queens of the Stone Age, has told me how hard it was. And he's one of the best comics alive, going up in front of a rock audience. Me having the band, it was almost like the cheat code for me to be able to get through it, because it never was dull. And at any moment I could just go, instead of doing a joke or doing a crowd work thing, I could just sing something. And it was almost covered where it was like, if there was any nervousness, or if there was any, thought of me having like, man, I don't think they're digging it, I could hide behind the music. But I'm just saying, there is something And we did great every show. It was just an incredible fucking 45 arenas. Every show was great. But I remember that, like, that first show that we did where, and it's like, imagine what you were saying is like, because they remember that first show, his management was like, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do that. And I was like, well, I was planning on doing all three of those things. They're like, well, you're on your own. And so I just go, all right, fuck it. And it's just like, let's go up, and we're probably gonna get fired after this, but let's just go up and try. And it was just one of the most exhilarating feelings in the world. And I think we did great. I don't think it was bad because, we never got fired, and we never got fired, but it was just like, there's something about, like, as a comedian, it's like, if it's not, you could tell somebody else, hey, would you want to go up in front of all these different acts and, at a festival or this? Like, I did stand up at a rave once. I did a stand up at a rave in Baltimore once in front of 3,000 people. People threw shit at me. And I wasn't even getting paid. And I remember people say to me, why didn't you just get off? And I go, because I can't, because I got to finish it. I was booked. They're not paying you. It's a gig, and it's this thing that we do, and it doesn't make a difference, good or bad. It's like, I have this thing that's like, I have to be up there, and it's just, oh man, it's like, I love it.
You know how I'm opening the act now? I go up and I say to the audience, look, I've been doing this for a long time. You guys know that. You're here, and I've made a lot of money, and I've won some awards and a lot of acclaim. I've done really well at this. So if it sucks tonight, it ain't me. If this is a bad show, it's not my fault. The fucking math is in.
I always, if I start well and then I start doing bad, I go, you guys just, okay, forget about this. Just remember the beginning when I was doing well. Yeah, just remember that. Just think about that. Forget about this shit. Good. Remember 15 minutes ago when it was going well? All right, let's see. We'll skip through a couple of these other songs. Let's mention them. 39. It's funny that we were talking about the Capaldi guy. Brian May, who wrote 39, is the song is about an astronaut who travels to a different place and near the speed of light. Is this right, Adam, that Brian May studied astrophysics?
No, he's a
I remember hearing that. Fine. Yeah, I remember hearing that. That was a big thing.
It's not like he took a couple of classes at the JC. Like, he's a legit astrophysicist. Like, he's a brainiac.
Really?
Yeah, that's why he plays the guitar with a sixpence. He used sixpence because he figured out something that nobody else could figure out.
I believe it. He's considered science for a career. He dropped out of his astrophysics degree to start Queen. It caused a huge rift between him and his father, who believed Brian was throwing his life and career away. Even though he had helped his son build his signature red special guitar as a youngster, it was only when his father saw Queen play at Madison Square Garden in '78 that his dad finally acknowledged that his son had made Jesus Christ, 78? That's like 3 years after this fucking record came out. They're already one of the biggest bands in the world. God damn, dude. Is that all like British or United Kingdom families, or like, is it all, is it like, were your parents like hard on you as well?
Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Why are you a fucking stand-up? Is it because your childhood was so great?
No.
Why get up on a stage every fucking night? Why? And he's the same. It's like, it's something to do. My wife, who is my best friend, says to me, all stand-ups have the same mother. And she says, cold with bad boundaries.
Yeah.
And ring any.
Oh God, yeah. I gotta call her as soon as this is over.
Yeah. I said that to Lewis Black, and he went, "Oh my God, that's perfect. I didn't look my mother in the eyes until she was 104 and on her deathbed."
Oh my God. No, you're right. Listen, I mean, I having a chip on my shoulder is probably the thing that's been the biggest driver in my career. And it keeps working. And so I almost want to thank, my mom and my dad, and for giving me the all the fucking baggage that I carry around. And like I said before, it's not ruined me. It hasn't ruined you, and it didn't ruin Brian. If anything, though, it's definitely, I don't know. I have a friend who's just got such an easy life, and his parents just bought him a fucking house, and he's
what? Look, we haven't known each other very long, and I don't know your friend, but fuck that guy.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, fuck him. I don't know. It's just what I'm saying. It's like he's trying to like make it, and I'm like, you've already made it. You already have a house. You have 2 kids. You're doing great. Like, you don't have that thing. Like, you gotta have that thing. You gotta have some shit in your family. That's what's gonna make you the star. That's what's gonna push you to be this huge success.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I think a lot of times in my life, though, I'd rather be in your buddy with the house, and it feels like a more comfortable way to be, I think.
But I mean, dude, it's me and my dog in my 1-bedroom apartment in Manhattan.
But you said something that makes me know that you are 100%, 100% who you say you are, which is when you mentioned the name of Dave Attell as a great stand-up, I went, yes.
Yeah.
Because to me, Attell is the Velvet Underground litmus test for stand-up comedians. If you don't know and love Dave Attell, you don't understand the medium.
He's my favorite thing about being in New York City, because I started in LA and I was there 14 years, is being at the Comedy Cellar. And not saying when you were at the Comedy Store, you weren't going to go up before or after great comics, but Esty, the booker at the Cellar, either puts me she used to put me right before Attell, and now she puts me after Attell. So I have to follow him, and it's at the VU where I have the band, so I'm doing like musical, like fun, this really like the shit that I do. But this is the thing, is that like it was really cool. The other night he went before me, and after the set he complimented my set, and then he goes, I really wanted to go after you tonight. And I go, oh, well, you just should have told me. He goes, yeah, I wanted to see if I could follow what you do. And I was like, yeah, you could, of course you could have. You're Dave. Like, yes, I have to jump around like a fucking, like a dildo to get my shit. You just got to say one riff, and you got him. And that's why you'll always say he's the man.
He is the master.
He is the man. Really, he's the master. All right, let's get to I want to get to the Prophet song, because this is the song that my buddy Morty said, if I want to find it, he said this is a song that is more, everybody talks about Bohemian Rhapsody, but this is the song where Eddie, we're not Eddie, I'm supposed to call him Eddie, I'm sorry, where Freddie, I'm sorry, does something, there's a part in the song this echo thing that he does in the song that is super important. Let me see if I can pull it up. Your thoughts on Prophet song while I look this up.
I think it's, with the exception of Bohemian Rhapsody, it's the best song on the album, no doubt about it. It has a vibe and an atmosphere that it creates from the first notes, and that I think is a great song.
Yeah,
I like that song.
It's incredible, and he was the one that pointed it out to me. Hold on, let me see if I can find what he wrote. God damn it, I can't find it. Jesus, it's gonna come to me later as soon as this is over, because he'll be like, "Did you mention the thing?" And I'll be like, "No, I fucking forgot about Bohemian Rhapsody is about this. The album closes with God Save the Queen, got screwed by management, Day at the Races." Well, here, while I look this up, I'm going to ask you this question. This album is named after Day of the Races, which is named after the Marx Brothers movies. Real quick question: who is an unlikely inspiration to you?
With the Marx Brothers. I love the Marx Brothers. I suppose that there's nothing unlikely about it, I guess, though, is it? I mean, for me, that it was. Billy Connolly was like Jackie Robinson for me. It was like before Billy that I didn't really see anybody who was from my background do that kind of thing. And Billy's 20 years older than me, so when Billy was in his 30s and really coming up, I was the age I was buying this album, so it was all kind of coming in at this time. So Billy and and I think the kind of mad cat. I used because Scottish television when I was a kid, they used to buy all these silent movies, just the cheap. I guess they were getting them cheap, so I would watch like Chaplin and Buster Keaton and Laurel and Hardy and the Marx Brothers and stuff. All these really old movies that we'd watch all of that. They would just play them all the time.
Yeah. So was Billy Connolly the first like big Scottish comedian
I think so. I mean, there are
that
other
broke?
ones, but
Yeah.
to me, he's Elvis to me. You know, I mean, it's like he's the game changer. I love him as an artist, and I love him as a man. He's an amazing stand-up comic. If you've he doesn't work anymore. It's kind of like he's done with that now. But he's one of the best I've ever seen. He's unbelievable, unbelievable. The way he
I
can
love his hour that he did. I don't know if it was HBO or something that I remember me and my dad watching. I mean, was brilliant, and I remember just doing a bit about like shrinkage in the ocean or something, whatever it was, and I don't know, and I think like, do you feel that sometimes like when you perform in America, you get a break because of the accent and because of the the cadence that the Scottish comedian has?
I think a bit of it. I think that's true. Probably at the beginning that was true. I think now they kind of know who I am, so rather they either like me or they don't.
Yeah.
But I think at the beginning it was people would say it's kind of six in one and half a dozen in the other. I'd get like when I screwed up in that audition for Suddenly Susan, I got the job on the Drew Carey show. But
Yeah.
when I remember when I was looking for a job right at the very, very beginning, and I was in LA trying to get work, and I went to audition to read the audiobook of the adaptation of the movie Braveheart. And I thought, this is the fucking shoe, and I'm going to get this. And the casting did my thing, and the casting director said, we don't feel your accent is authentic. And I was like, I can fucking assure you it is. but they had to get the gig. So I don't know. I mean, yeah, I think it gets you some things and it doesn't get you other things. It's kind of like for a while. It's like
of
I know.
I'm still laughing at that. It's like, nah, dude, you're not Scottish enough.
I couldn't get the fucking audiobook of Braveheart, and I think I was the only guy in LA at the time, and it's crazy.
It's insane.
Yeah, but so you get some things and you don't get other things. It is what it is.
Sure. Adam, so while we start talking about Bohemian, I want you to see if you can pull it up because Morty's going to kill me if I don't mention it. Just try to see if you can find the echo part in the prophecy song or the prophet song. Because he says, because he's right. Like everybody, if you talk about this record, we're going to talk about the next song. You're going to talk about fucking You're My Best Friend. I'm in love with my car. Everything. But and Bohemian's always going to be the track that this album is accredited to and what makes this album great. But the prophet song, like you mentioned, I think is the hidden gem. So look up that, Adam, while we bring into Bohemian. We'll wrap it up on Bohemian, then go into the final shit. So this is what I would consider one of, if not I'd say this is top 10, one of the greatest songs ever written. Like you said it before, this is such an iconic song that when it comes on, regardless if it's the radio or if it's on your Spotify, if it starts, you play it to the end because each part is just as important as the one before it. It is been ranked number 17th on the Rolling Stone magazine's list of the 500 greatest songs of all time. It came in just ahead of Purple Rain by Prince and Beyonce's Crazy in Love. Really? That's in the top 20? Okay. All right. Yeah. Fuck it. Yeah. 2021. I get it. All right.
Double check, but yes.
Nah, I get it. This is essentially the protagonist talking to his mother about a murder he committed, then his journey into hell in operatic terms, which according to some people end with his death. This people say this is another explanation is not to do with Mercury's childhood, but his sexuality. It was around the time that he was starting to come to terms with his bisexuality and his relationship with Mary Austin was falling apart. Whatever the meaning is, we may never know. Mercury has remained very tight-lipped about what the song is about. He did write the lyrics. I mean, what do you get from this? Like, I mean, before we even get, I could read all this shit, but like, I'd love to get your thoughts on this song or anything before I, you know.
What this song did, I remember at the time, and I listened to it, obviously I listened to it today, was I feel like it had like the epic quality of the musical, arrangement and the journey that you go on from the opera. Then they make you wait and they make you wait and they make you wait until you get to the guitar riff, and then it blows your fucking mind. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable. That the when you're talking about the idea of at school, at high school, run about this time, maybe a little bit later, but certainly while the album was still in current, we did Albert Camus' The Outsider.
Yeah.
About and I always felt, I remember when we read The Outsider, I thought this is I think this is where Freddie must have been reading this or thinking about this, when I always thought there was the connection between Camus' The Outsider and Bohemian Rhapsody. That kind of I've made a terrible decision and I'm going to hell. And I think that I don't know if that's true, but I was interested to hear. I'd never heard that stuff before about that you said, and so I'm kind of like, oh, I'll bring up the Camus thing then. That might make me sound clever. But
No, dude. By the way, that's to hold your thought. Like I've got like 3 Camus books. I've got Soren Kierkegaard. I got that on my bookshelf of books that I may one day read, but are there to impress girls when they come over to my apartment to think I'm some deep thinker. I spent hundreds of dollars on these books, dude. Hundreds.
you better hope that these girls aren't Christian existentialists, because they're going to ask you questions that are very difficult to answer.
I can't do that. That's I'll be like, oh no, let's not talk about that. Just let's just cuddle up.
Let's talk about you.
Yeah. No, I don't know what you can really say about this song. It's like lyric. It takes you on a journey.
For the devil, or it's become bigger than the band, bigger than the genre. It gets into the pantheon of the like you said, like the greatest songs of all time. It's a great song. It's a massive, important piece of music. It transcends even rock music. It's important in all forms of cultural history of that time and since. It is an important piece of art. It's a Picasso, it's a Degas, it's a work of art. It's a masterpiece.
It's a perfect way to say it. This is, I mean, you could read the statistics, which is like, by the way, too, like, watching the movie Bohemian Rhapsody, they're talking about like this was their first single off this record. This is almost a 6-minute song in an era when everything was 3 minutes, and they're like, no, this is what we want it to be. And this was actually Queen's first top 10 hit in the US, peaking at number 9 in April of 76. In the UK, where Queen was already established, it went to number 1. Stayed for 9 weeks. Ironically, the song that knocked this off the number 1 chart position in the UK was Mamma Mia by ABBA, which, look, same song, no, but God, do I fucking love Mamma Mia. Come on, let me go.
ABBA, one of the greatest pop bands of all time. All time,
yeah. Really, really it is. And people, I'm not gonna say people shit on. Nobody shits on ABBA. Everybody likes them. Ace of Base is who they shit on. The copycats of ABBA.
Maybe something in that.
What's even cooler about this song, which is, I mean, I'll say it, this is when I found out about the song, is that it's from Wayne's World. A whole new audience, from that movie that came on in that driving scene, and they're lip syncing it. And that took it back. I think it went back to, it was re-released as a single when that came out and charted at number 2. And that is, in a sense, it was a turning point in the legacy of Queen. Am I right about this, Adam? Am I missing anything, or?
Yeah, no, because at that point, Queen's momentum was kind of starting to peter off a little bit, and they were, not the cool band anymore, and that gave it a whole new life again. That gave them,
Yeah, what's funny? I think a good question is like, I mean, There's something about Queen. I have a vintage Queen t-shirt from 1980 that, I mean, it's great. I've worn it so much. It's so super thin now. I have to be very careful about when I wear it because I really want to keep it for a few more years. I wore it all throughout the pandemic. But I wear that shirt, and yes, it's cool, but there's when you're wearing a Queen shirt, people, there's more than any other band, people will come up to me and is Queen now one of the coolest bands? I mean, obviously, and it's no argue, fucking Freddie Mercury might be the greatest frontman that's ever lived, without a doubt. I mean, watching that performance at Live Aid of them doing Radio Gaga, I mean, that brings chills, to me. Once again, my friend Angelo was the one that showed me that. But it's like, is Queen like top 5 coolest bands of all time? And is this one of the reasons why?
I don't know. I think cool is not where I'd go with it.
Okay.
I think, cool for me is, is the Velvets or the Ramones or
Okay.
or people coming out of CBGBs and Blondie in
Blondie, yeah.
1977, Talking Heads, and but I think that's preference. That's not what I would go
Sure.
with.
No, I know, but I know what you're saying though. I know exactly what you're saying though. Yeah.
Right. And I think Queen, to me, Queen are right at the very beginning, we talked about the first 3 albums and then this album. And if I look, I'm not a rock critic or an expert in any of this. I just was there and listened, and I like music. But for me, Queen were cool. For me, Queen were cool in the first 3 albums. But this album and this particular song made them NASA. It was a Saturn V after that. It was huge. They were a brand after that. It was enormous. So I think they became almost like a genre in themselves because of the operatic stuff, because of the amazing idiosyncratic performances from Freddie Mercury, but just the sound of the band. I mean, we touched on it before. Roger Taylor is one of the greatest rock drummers I've ever heard. He's an amazing drummer, and I think that the qualifications of coolest, or I have difficulty with it because I don't really know what it means. Maybe I've read too much Kierkegaard, but it comes down to semantics for me at that point.
Yeah. I like what you said about, it was a perfect way to correct me. Like, cool is those bands like the Velvet Underground that not everybody knows about. It's the same shit. When something gets too big, which is what this is, the record that made Queen too big. It was, it was like, I remember Coldplay when they just had that first record, and it's like, all right, well, now they're still great now, but just now everybody listens to them. My dad knows who they are, or whatever. This song and this record is what took Queen from being this cool rock band to suddenly being global. And the word,
and I'm glad it did it. It's a great song to do it on. It's a great album to do it on. And they have, they've carved their name into the stone. I mean, that's fantastic. They were brave. They were a brave band. I mean, you got to remember, even like in the 1970s and beyond, even using the word Queen, that was a slur.
Yeah.
They went at it, man. It was crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, they were very brave and very gifted, and I'm glad they all made a ton of money. And it's sad that Freddie was taken too soon. That was awful, but he left
his
the
mark. He left, but there's you say too soon. And yes, anytime you die at that age, yes. Too soon to me would be like Kurt Cobain, Otis Redding died way before they became global.
Yeah.
He was able to. I mean, Kurt Cobain was even a superstar, but like Freddie was already, dude. They were already they were the headliners of Live Aid. They were as big could fucking get. And he left, whether it's with this and they did get to do more music after this, they were able to leave a really solid, strong
amazing
collection of music, which, like you said, they went from being the coolest band, the best rock band, and then they're kind of cheesy for a second, and then Wayne's World comes out, and then they're popular again, and now they're just like, you know, you talk about top 20 bands in rock and roll history, if not music history, and you have to mention Queen. And a lot of it has to do this. So yeah, I mean, cool is cool. Cool doesn't mean money. Velvet Underground, they didn't make much money. You know what I mean? Queen made some fucking money, dude. They are well paid.
They're still making a lot of money.
Still, yeah. Good for them. Adam, before we wrap this up, is there anything I'm missing that we need to talk about? I feel like I don't want to fuck off.
Well, just going back to the Prophet song stuff for a second that you wanted to find out about with the.
Did you play it?
Like that. You wanted me to play it. I thought you wanted to find out how they did it.
Oh, well, either way.
Later. We could edit it
sure.
Later. But no, so basically it was because Brian May referred to that song as it's a shame that it's overlooked in the Queen catalog, rightfully so. So that song kind of actually is a little bit, early progressive rock because they were they tuned down the guitars to D, which yes, it's a staple of nu metal in the 90s, but that was kind of innovative at the time.
Yeah.
Two, they ran to get like the delay effects. They would play with the reel-to-reels and stop it and then play and then record. And they also like did an air conditioner. They basically got one of the effects they did was they ran an air conditioner through a phaser. So like they were, this is part of the reason why the album was so expensive is because they were trying all this experimental stuff at the time. Because why not?
Yeah, this is
good. In Britain, air conditioning is very expensive.
Really?
So if you're running, I don't know.
Maybe in
you don't fucking. I'm in Scotland. You don't need fucking air conditioning.
I didn't think you did. I was like, it's always about like, yeah, over the window. You know what I think this is? I think this is Queen doing their pet sounds, where the studio now becomes an instrument, and when you have that technology, it's like, why not use it? And I mean, good for them.
A good comparison as well, because it's a definitive movement in the band, and it's a definitive movement in music, actually, in music, in studio technology, in techniques. And I think that's a great analogy, or a great comparison is the Pet Sounds one.
This is, I don't know if to all the listeners out there, if you've never listened to a Queen record, I don't know if you start with this. You can, and you can go a la Memento and kind of like listen to this one and then go back and to see how they get to this. But this is, I mean, if you are a music fan and you obviously know Bohemian Rhapsody, but it's like the band Queen, it's like, it's a fun band to be able to dig into their catalog, which I'm still just getting into. And I mean, it's like I said, I'll never forget my dad watching him. That's the Queen. He's the king. He is arguably, every front man in the history of music, whether it's Axl Rose or Eddie Vedder or anybody, will be compared to Freddie Mercury. And I don't think anybody will ever take him off the notch as being one of the greatest, if not the greatest front man of all time. Agreed?
Agreed.
Okay. I'm going to ask you these questions. We're going to get you out of here. Dude, you rule. By the way, please come on all the time, because you're just we have another 5 years of this. So we got other records. We got other records. I wish I would have known that you dug Echo and the Bunnymen, because I would have had you on fucking years ago.
Yeah. You know what? Done any of the Eno albums, or any of the Eno albums in there? Are they in the 500?
We did. So it's funny. We did Here Come the
Warm Jet.
We did that with the guy from Devo. We did it with Gerald Casale from Devo. Is that right, Adam?
That's a good choice. No, that makes sense.
And then we did. I think, what was the one that you saw? You said the first record you bought was Here Come the Warm Jets, or another one? Was it Green New World?
No, the Before and After Science and Taking Tiger Mountain by Strategy. They're the three that I think are important.
We did another one with, I think you wrote it on here.
So
did
another Green World with Gerald Casale.
Another Green World.
And then you did the Jet Speed Up with Perry Farrell.
Yes, we did Perry Farrell from Red Hot Chili Peppers. Jane's Addiction. Which we did at his house. I'll say this, and it was his right. This is like February 2020. So Trump's still in office, and Perry would not shut up about Trump. All he wanted to talk about was Trump. And I'm like, but let's talk about Brian Eno. And he'd be like, they got kids in cages, man. And I'm like, but Brian Eno. And And then after the podcast, he goes outside to smoke a joint. And I'm like, can I join you? We're outside. We're smoking a joint on his patio in beautiful Pacific Palisades. And I say to him, I go, hey, man, how much CNN are you watching? And he goes, I'm watching it all day long. And I'm like, dude, you got to turn it off. It's going to ruin your life. Trust me. I understand that the world's a fucked up place and what he's doing is crazy, but you can't obsess over it. And he goes, thank you so much for that. He's like, you're right. And then he goes, do you want to go jump on my trampoline? And I'm like, yes, let's go. And then we went and jumped on his trampoline for an hour. All right. Let me ask you these questions I ask everybody. We'll get you out of here. What is your favorite song on this record?
I think probably the Prophet song.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. I think, to be honest, I think it's that one. I think it's hard because of Bohemian Rhapsody is so iconic. But listening to it today when I listened to it, that was the one I went, God, that's a great song.
Yeah. Listen, this is a very, very, I'm even loving I'm in Love with the Car. Like, it just changes whenever your mood's in. So, but I'll always say Bohemian just because Bohemian is, it's like you said, it's just because it's bigger and iconic doesn't mean it's your favorite. It's just, it's like, how about this? Besides Bohemian Rhapsody, what's your favorite song, which is the Prophet song? There you go. Yeah. All right. What's your least favorite song on this record?
I think it would probably be, I think, today, the one that I was like, was Lazing on a Sunday. That doesn't really tickle my nuggets in the same way. But you know what?
Who doesn't want to get nugget tickled? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All right. Can you fuck to this record?
Yeah, I can't fuck to anything now. I'm 61. I'm lucky.
But in the day, do you think people could fuck to this record?
I don't know. I guess, as long as it's not, I don't think you can actually. It changes too much all the time. Yeah. I don't think you can.
I don't think you can either. And then to end it also, like if you do last the 46 minutes and then have God Save the Queen come on, like, you know what I mean? It's too much. It's too much. This is not a fuckable record.
It sounds like a challenge, though. Perhaps you could masturbate to this record. Maybe that's what it is.
To the Fleece Army. To the listeners of this podcast, we're trying the A Night at the Opera fuck challenge. If you can do it, you don't have to videotape it. Just say that you did it and tell us how it went and how far did you get, and we'll send you a hoodie. How about that, right? Adam, you'll keep score. All right, what would be your elevator pitch to get someone to listen to this record, Craig?
I would say you have to listen to this record to. This is a great fucking record. You should listen to it. Look, I'm not your fucking dad. You listen to what you want, but you should listen to this. You like good music, you'll like this. Trust me.
Yeah, I think this is a very, very important record in all of music, not just because of the one song. I think you're talking about one of the greatest bands of all time. This is a shift record, and the shift records are always some of the best ones. Either, like you said, they'll be argued about, where it's like, this isn't, what the music that I listened to before, or this is like, I love the new direction. Either way, it's a damn near perfect record. So to all the Fleece Army out there, listen to us, tell us how you think. Craig, please promote away. Anything you want to promote, buddy?
No, I don't do that. It's unseemly. So it's been great to be on your show, and I hope I get to see you when I'm in New York. I'll be there in January.
Please
make something.